Same thing happened like with Vuela. Um, Ironically, kind of exposing myself here, but I'm a little bit of a Roblox addict. And so I have a couple
Oh,
online friends, and basically like one time, like when I was like first talking to them, or like one of the first like voice calls we had, they were like asking me like, oh, like you just graduated, right? And I was like, oh yeah. And like they were like, wait, so where are you going to college? I'm like, I'm going to Stanford.
hello, and welcome back to the Voice for You podcast, where we empower the leaders of today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Jesh Vana. Today, I'm joined by a young leader in our community. She is a relentless advocate for youth and marginalized voices, serving as the founder of 3 organizations such as Vuela, standing for Visionaries Uniting and Empowering Leaders of America, as well as president for her school's Hispanic Youth Leadership Council and her district's Special Education Inclusion Council. Throughout high school, she has also interned for many different organizations, including the USC Shoah Foundation, the State Senate Campaign, the YWCA San Gabriel Valley. Her work has definitely not gone unnoticed, as she was named a 2025 Coca-Cola Scholar, leading her way through policy and setting up her future and others' futures for a better tomorrow. She is Miss Alexis DiPrima. How are you doing today, Alexis?
Hi, Jesh. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really grateful to
Definitely.
be here. Doing great. I'm really excited, and I've been having like a hectic summer, so I'm really glad that we finally got to meet.
Definitely. I mean, obviously, summer's about, when do you move into college?
September 14th, I think. Like,
Okay.
okay, going to
Cool, dude,
Stanford,
that's
and
long.
I've talked to a lot of kids, and we are all very confused on when the move-in day is, but we're pretty sure it's like September 14th, so
Okay.
soon-ish, but
That's
also kind of a while from now.
Yeah, that's a while, because I know all of my like senior friends. They're like, "Oh, I'm moving next week." Like one of my really good senior friends, he's like, he's moving in next week, so he's trying to get all like us meeting up like and stuff. They meet
Yeah.
like a week or like 2 weeks or anything afterwards. So it's like, dang, okay,
Yeah. Quarter
yeah,
system, so we start a little bit later. But yeah, no, right now is like my hangout last time before everyone leaves season. So
exactly. But obviously, with you being busy, I mean, that's the complete opposite from what I'd expect from a senior, because seniors are usually more chill before college, but keeping busy is low key the strat.
yeah, honestly, I feel like I just get very bored and I feel like unproductive and like I need to be doing something like fulfilling a purpose in life. And when I'm not doing that, like I remember, like I mentioned earlier to you, like when summer started, there was like 2 weeks of June where I was just bed rotting every day, wasn't really doing all that much, and I was like, no, I need to get back at work. Like I know I just graduated and all, but like I wanna make change in my community, and I'm not doing that by sitting in bed all day. So
Exactly. No, I personally, I can't go without doing something. I sit at home, just rotting, and it's like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'll be
yeah,
so honest.
feel you.
It's not the vibe. But before getting to the interview, tell me a little bit about yourself, your hobbies, your passions, and who you are as a person.
Yeah, so hi, like Jesh mentioned, my name is Alexis DiPrima. I'm from just outside of Los Angeles in like a little area, like a pocket suburb called San Gabriel Valley. I'm from Rosemead specifically. It's a really small city. But yeah, I've grown up here my entire life. Huge LA girl, huge California girl. I do a lot of work with, California legislators and public officials. Really passionate about education policy specifically. I've been on a couple youth advisory boards throughout high school, and 2 of them were for like state departments of education. And so I was on a youth advisory board for the California Department of Ed, and then also a youth advisory board for the LA County Office of Ed. And I represented like over 6 million California students on the California Department of Ed Student Advisory Council, and then like 2.1 million on the LA County one. And so I'm really passionate about like education policy and, kind of reforming the education system to being a more equitable and inclusive one. On top of that, I'm also really passionate about advocating for youth. And so I've been like, obviously like as a youth advisor on like a lot of boards and whatnot, I love doing that in my community aside from just education policy. So like Jess mentioned, I'm also on the youth advisory board for the YWCA San Gabriel Valley. And so I do a lot of work with that, mostly like youth empowerment, things like that. Also just like teaching kids like skill sets that are really valuable, especially throughout high school. Recently, we did like a summer program called Next Gen Leaders, and it was like empowerment through like tech, leadership, storytelling, and like kind of finding your voice. And so we did a lot of like storytelling. We learned how to use like Microsoft Excel. We did some 3D printing. I actually have like a cute
Oh
little
shoot,
Stanford keychain I made there. I thought it was
that's
cool.
sick.
with an S. Yeah, I
Oh,
had a
that's
really fun
cool.
time making that. But anywho, I had a really good time this summer just kind of working with youth in my community. I had already been involved with the YWCA like throughout my senior year of high school and even the tail end of my junior year. But this summer's just been great. Like I've been having a really good time working with youth and community. But yeah, aside from that, I'm just again really passionate about education policy, really passionate about youth advocacy, and just making an impact in my community. Also, I've been, like Jesh mentioned, I've been running a nonprofit. It's an international youth mentorship nonprofit called Vuela, and Vuela actually means to fly in Spanish. I actually have like some butterflies over here because the mascot's a butterfly because we try to help kids like fly above barriers. And I feel like butterfly is just a really good symbol of like resilience.
That's perfect.
Overcoming barriers. So yeah, this summer we've been doing a summer internship where we've been kind of going over like life skills in regards to getting involved in your community. So things like community service and advocacy. I've been kind of teaching like these high schoolers how to get involved in their community and how to really like make themselves stand out and learn really new experiences and learn a lot about themselves in the process while like pursuing their passions. And so, just kind of like more than your typical advice that you tend to get like from college counselors and whatnot. And so,
Exactly.
I really wanted to give like unfiltered raw advice to people because that's like kind of the advice that I wish I had when I was a high schooler. And so I've been doing that a lot this summer and just like in general throughout like my senior year and whatnot. And so yeah, I've been having a really good time with just like making change in my community, even if it's like on Zoom. I have a really good time talking to like the youth that I mentor and whatnot. So yeah.
Definitely. I mean, everything you just mentioned fits perfectly, like literally like a perfect puzzle piece into what the Voice for You podcast, what our mission is. Obviously, like I did mention, our tagline, like you have your tagline to fly above your ears with Vuela. Ours is to empower the leaders of today and tomorrow, and everything you just said is perfect. It
That's
fits
awesome.
perfectly in for sure. So I mean, the most perfect guest possible for this for an episode for sure.
Awesome.
But before I get into my interviews, I like to ask a icebreaker question of sorts. Just to get to know and the audience to get to know you as a person too. So if you could shapeshift into any or like take the body of any famous person in history, who would it be and why?
Okay. This is actually a really cool question because I have a really cool answer. My answer would be Dolores Huerta, and she was an activist. Have you heard of her?
I have heard of her.
Yeah. So she worked alongside Cesar Chavez in the Delano
Yes.
grape strike. Yeah.
Yes.
And I've just always been so obsessed with that portion of history because like as a Latina, I feel like growing up, I didn't really learn that much about like Latinx history within America. And so that was like the main thing I learned throughout high school like, in regards to like Mexican American history. And so she was just always like my idol. And she actually taglined the phrase called Si se puede, because in the midst of the Delano grape strike, which means like si se puede means it can be done. And so basically she said that in the middle of the Delano grape strike, and that phrase is so prevalent within the Latinx community. And so cool, like she's 95 years old now, but I'm so excited. But yeah, no, she's insane, and she still does work in her community. Like every week I see like a new project that she's working on. I see her at a community event, and I literally have the opportunity to meet her in a couple of weeks at like the YWCA San Gabriel Valley Gala. I actually get to introduce her, so I'm really excited. But anyways, if I could shapeshift, I would probably be her because she just made so much change, especially within the Latinx community, like throughout her lifetime. And even like as a young activist, she was so prevalent within like the Latinx community, specifically in California.
Exactly.
But now like she's 95 years old and she's still out here like making all this change and inspiring like the next generation of leaders, like including myself. And so really excited to meet her, which is like I think like the next best thing to shapeshifting. So yeah.
Definitely. I remember we spent 5th grade. We like Cesar Chavez was in the grape strikes. That was our main focus point in reading. So I learned a lot about his work, and it was him and Martin Luther King. We talked about them in 5th grade English.
That's cool.
And one of the books we read, it was tied. The reason we did learn about Cesar Chavez was because we read Esperanza Rising.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's based off like the migrants and the grape farms and all that. So yeah, the work that they did like in the early 1900s, mid 1900s for Mexican civil rights is crazy too, especially because in California, that was the most diverse compared to like I feel like it's more compared to New York, in my opinion.
Yeah. We have a
Yeah,
really, really diverse like set of people here. Also like just thinking about California, like it used to be part of Mexico before
exactly.
1848, like in the Mexican-American War. And so, when you think about it, there's like so much deep and rich history here. And even
Exactly.
just looking at like modern day, like I don't want to get into politics or anything, but I'm very passionate about that, but I won't get into it today. But, just looking at everything that's going on right now, like it's just inspiring thinking about the fact that even in the past, there are so many people, especially like Dolores Huerta and like, Cesar Chavez, that fought for Mexican American rights, civil rights and just like equality. And so now, even though there's a lot of things happening, like it's inspiring knowing that people like that are still around and that
Exactly.
there's still inspiring people like our age even. So,
Exactly.
I think that just having role models like that is really important. And so I'm just really grateful that, I know that history, but also that like I literally get to meet her, so yeah.
Exactly. That's like one of your heroes. And, not everyone gets a chance to meet their heroes ever.
For sure. And
So
the fact
that's
she's
cool.
95, like she's 95, I feel so grateful for that.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I mean, she's done so much for the community too. So like, that's just more knowledge gained for you. So that's definitely something. And the work, obviously, like back then, it was a lot tougher than it is now. So the work that she put in, that's definitely truly inspiring and stuff too.
For sure. Pretty groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But as a senior, first off, congratulations on graduating.
Thank you.
It's the next step. I don't like I say this, but every single time I say it, people get mad because then I make them feel old. But it's like I say that you're finishing the tutorial stage.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. I definitely
Yeah.
agree. Fun fact, like I've been really reflecting on high school recently, and I'm just like really grateful, even though like it was tough at times because when you're growing up, like you're a kid, you're going through all these like trials and tribulations, especially like as, someone who's motivated and high achieving. Like, gosh, like I lost count of the amount of like sleepless nights I had and whatnot. And so there were a lot of tough times and also like really big learning experiences that I had. But,
Exactly.
at the end of the day, I'm really grateful that I like went through everything that I went through and that I went to the school that I went to, even though like underfunded public school, but I still had a great experience and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And, fun fact, like I literally just posted my graduation post on
Yes, I
Instagram
actually did. I saw
yesterday.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I'm grateful. I'm just grateful. And even though, again, 2 months late, it's better late than
It
never.
doesn't
And
matter.
yeah,
Doesn't matter. Post a post. Like a post is a post.
for sure. It's for the feed.
Yeah. The likes are likes. Comments are comments. Those don't change for sure. Definitely. But as a senior, what school have you committed to? And what about that college first attracted you to not only apply there, but then also commit?
So I'm really excited to announce that I committed to Stanford University, and that was actually my dream school for a really long time. I even like mentioned my little Stanford keychain that I 3D printed earlier. I'm just really grateful that I committed there because like it was my dream school for the longest time throughout high school. Growing up, I really didn't know that much about college because I am a first generation college student. And so, growing up, the only role models that I had in terms of college, the only thing I knew about college was that my cousins were going, my older cousins. And so my second oldest cousin on my mom's side, he actually graduated valedictorian from high school and he went to UCLA on a full ride.
Oh,
So
dang.
yeah, right? And so he graduated like 8 years before I did. So he's 8 years older than me. And he and like my other cousin as well, she went to like University of Laverne. She was also really smart. They were like my biggest role models for a while because, I have like a long, like I could go on a whole like long, storytelling tangent about like my family history, but it's very complex. But like long story short, my cousins were like my biggest role models academically for a long time. And so, going into high school, I didn't really know much about college. All I knew is that I wanted to go. And so for a while, I was just like, okay, well, my cousin who's really smart, who is valedictorian, is going to UCLA. So I want to go to UCLA. And so I really liked UCLA for a while. And I've actually done a lot of work with like UCLA throughout high school. I can get into that a little bit later. But I still really love UCLA. Like it was generally like one of my top contenders when I was picking between my schools. But at the end of the day, I actually found out about Stanford as a sophomore. I didn't even know it existed before my sophomore year. Like that, yes, like that was how unaware I was about college and how honestly, like I think a lot of that was also because of COVID, because I was literally in seventh grade when the pandemic hit. And so my middle school experience was just obliterated. And I was an Avid. I don't know if you've heard of Avid before, but it's basically like a program at a lot of high schools that, or even like middle schools, because for me, like I got involved when I was in middle school, and it's
Yeah.
basically called like advancement via individual determination. It's basically like a college prep like class. And so, that was really like my only introduction that I had to college before I got to high school. And so that was just completely cut off for me. Like I like, we had online class and whatnot, but it just wasn't the same. And so, I really didn't know like anything about college again before like even like my freshman year, because everyone was readjusting at that time. That was the year everyone went back to school, 2021. And, even then I didn't really know that much. I wasn't really thinking about college. I'd always been really introverted before high school, even though like I was locked in like academically, but leadership wise, I always knew I was capable of doing it. I just didn't really know like how to do it. And so when I got to freshman year, I was like, okay, we're just coming out of the pandemic. I've been like a hermit for the past like year and a half because I've just been at home all day. And so now I really want to get involved. And so I started getting involved my freshman year, but then again, like my sophomore year, that was when I really started to think about college and learn about it. But anyways, Stanford. I learned about Stanford in like the middle of my AP World History class my sophomore year. Like, I distinctly remember I had a TA and he was a year older than me. He was a junior and he was like really motivated, and he was involved with things like Questbridge. He was a Questbridge College Prep Scholar. He was also just really into history, and he saw a lot of potential in me that I didn't even really see in myself at the time, because I was running a club. For reference, it's called Hispanic Youth Leadership Council. I founded that at my school after like a long freshman year, and I can kind of get into that later. It's like I have a whole story about that. But anyways, he saw a lot of potential in me that I didn't see in myself, and so he was like, hey, I went to like this college fair the other day and I thought of you and I got you some pamphlets. I think you should look through them. And so the first one that I saw and the prettiest one I saw was from Stanford. And I was like, Stanford, I feel like I've heard that name before, but like I don't really know what it's about. And he was like, girl, you don't know what Stanford is? And I'm like, no. And so he like showed me the pamphlet, and I just remember it was like the prettiest sunset that you could ever imagine. Like California, we have like okay sunsets and sometimes they're really nice, but like genuinely it was like one of the prettiest sunsets I've ever seen, like on that pamphlet. And so it was just like it kind of the sunset illuminated like the arches that Stanford has, and the arches are like very kind of hacienda like mission style. And because California is really like, again, like enriched with like Latinx history, and just thinking about like the California missions, like that played a huge role in like the architecture that's scattered throughout the state. And so, growing up in the San Gabriel Valley, which is right next to the San Gabriel Mission, like my school is literally down the street from the San Gabriel Mission. And so a lot of the architecture around here, especially like I live by Pasadena as well, which is another like really big city, big suburb, that has always been like, really enticing to me because it had like all those arches, and it really like, because I've always been so into like Latinx history, it's just always been like very enticing to me and very interesting to me, and it made me feel like I was at home. And so when I saw that, like those arches on that pamphlet, I was like, wait, like I kind of like, I don't know, there was like a little spark or something, like it felt like home, even though it was like in NorCal, like 5-6 hours away. And so I did some research into it, and like I found out that I really liked the school. And then I ended up visiting my sophomore year, the summer between my sophomore and junior year, for the first time. And I just absolutely loved it. Like I fell in love with it.
Well, shoot.
And so I'd say a lot, like I wouldn't really recommend having dream schools, because like you never know, and you don't really want to be like completely heartbroken if something doesn't work out. And like everyone was telling me that too, like they were like, Alexis, like you should not have a dream school, especially at Stanford, like it's really hard to get into. And I was like, I know, but I can't help myself. And so yeah, I was just chasing that for like literally until the moment I opened my decision letter. And so, I loved the arches, I loved the architecture, I loved the people there. It just felt like home. And I remember like when I was driving away from my first visit, I actually saw this pomegranate tree, right outside of like where I entered the Stanford campus. And pomegranates are really significant to me because my family, specifically like my grandma, she immigrated here from Mexico like in the 60s. And she and my grandfather built, like when they first bought their first house, which is actually where I'm sitting right now, they spent like $23,000 on a house, and that was like their biggest goal as immigrants. They wanted to buy a house and they wanted to raise their children in a really nice house. And so, like in California, things are really expensive. And so obviously they were immigrants. It was, and like, financially, like it took some time, but they got there and like they managed to buy a house for themselves, and they made like the most beautiful backyard. And so throughout my childhood, I have like really distinct memories of like pomegranate trees. There's a really big pomegranate tree in my yard, and so every year, like around my birthday, because it's in like fall when they kind of bloom, we'd always go back there and pick pomegranates. To this day, like the tree's kind of dying, but like it's still alive, and so we still go out there every year. And so, anyways, I saw the pomegranate and I was like, "This is home. Like this is it. Like this is my school. Like I don't know what I have to do to get here, but I'm gonna get here, and I'm gonna do it all like to get here." And so, throughout my college app process, like I just kept like, I was so locked in, like after I visited Stanford and after I really learned about it, because I was like, this is my school. I really want to go here. And so I was just really determined to make it happen, especially because in my area, especially my school, no one really gets into schools like that, and this year was actually the first year, like, I'm like friends with like my friend group is just like the uber nude friend group. And so like we were just like the top 10 like GPA wise, and so we were all like locked in, and all of my friends got into really good schools this year, and I'm like so grateful for that. But that was like the first year this has happened, and so yeah, anyways, I was just like really grateful, and I feel like it was such a motivator for me, like having friends like that by my side throughout high school. But anyways, back to Stanford. Like I visited Stanford a couple of times throughout my junior year as well. And so I ended up going back like after I visited the first time, and that was just like for like a more in-depth visit, and I was like I really like NorCal, so I was visiting up there. And then I ended up going back in May because I was a Questbridge College prep scholar, and so I got to just tour the campus again, and I was like, okay, like I keep coming back here. Like, I think it's a sign. I really want to come here. And so I decided to just, I really wanted to chase that dream. And, I'm really grateful that I'm here now.
That's valid. That's 100% valid. I can relate to the friend group part. Like, all of my close friends, we don't make up the top 10 because my school is, like, very competitive in general.
Yeah.
But, my close friends, a couple of them are actually downstairs right now.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm talking to you, and I'm hearing them cackle at the top of their lungs downstairs, like hyenas. I'm just sure they know. Maybe they know. I don't know if they heard me or not, but
that's cool. That you're close to your friends.
They're all very smart. We're all very smart. Try hard, not like try hard, but very academic.
Yes.
And I feel
my friend group was the same.
Exactly, and I feel like that's how I was raised. At least, my parents always told me like, only A's, nothing else. And it's also like the environment that you put yourself in is very important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
The people, you are the people you surround yourself with.
Exactly.
I feel really strongly about that. And, like my friends all have very different goals for me. Like, and I have a really diverse group of friends as well. But, a lot of them want to go into like med or psych or business. And, even though we all had different passions, at the end of the day, like I really wouldn't have gotten through high school without them, especially like my classes. Like, because every day, going into the same school every single day can feel really like and exhausting, especially when you're doing all these things like hard classes, extracurriculars. And so I just felt like I would have drowned like without my friends, and so I feel really grateful.
That's fair. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, you can like drown it out. I can barely hear it.
Yeah, you can hear it
just a little bit. Like I couldn't hear it before right now.
Okay,
it's gone.
I can go tell him to like quiet down a little bit if you want me to.
All good.
All right. But yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying there, for people that you do surround yourself with. And it is tiring. How big was your class size?
352.
Okay. Yeah, mine's like 750.
That's
so
crazy.
It's like it's a very diverse, because my high school is the only high school in our town. Like,
really?
It's the only high school in the town. So everybody goes to that one high school, and it's a massive campus.
That's crazy.
So it's very, very big.
I think like in, obviously in California, there's a lot of people here. So we have like a high school every like 3 minutes,
Exactly.
like you could go down the block and you'd like from one high school to the other, and you'd find another one within like a mile and a half.
Exactly.
Like when I did track and cross country, we actually like ran to the other schools in the area because like there were so many. And so I feel like that's like the difference between like California or like more populated states as compared to like Midwestern states and like just less populated states. Like there's less schools because there's less people. So that makes sense. Like that's crazy that you have such a big class size.
Yeah, because I know I only live like an hour out from Memphis. The Memphis area got like a bunch of high schools, like crazy schools I've never heard of in my life. And then I step over to where I live, and there's only one high school. So it's just like there's like 9, like around maybe not 9, like 6 to 9 elementary schools. They all feed into 2 middle schools. Those 2 middle schools feed into my high school.
That's insane.
It's just a build up from there.
Yeah.
The people you surround yourself with, that's one thing I really do believe in. The people you surround yourself with will change. Because if it wasn't for our environment, we would all be the same person.
100%.
Let's be so for real. We'd be the same person. but each person is different due to the fact that their environment, how they grew up, their parents, their friends, their siblings, what they had given to them and stuff. It's the environment that changes a lot of people.
I agree. And I feel like even like just thinking about the college app process or like, scholarship application process, I'd really encourage like anyone listening, especially if they're, going into the application process right now, to really consider all the things that make you you, whether it be your friends, your background, your upbringing, because I feel like when you really tap into those things, not only can you like, really start writing authentically in applications and like kind of piece together why you are the way you are and why you are who you are, you can also just like, sell yourself better. I feel like when you really tap into like what made your passions like so prevalent in your life, you can start to realize like, oh, this is why I like doing this, or this is why I'm so passionate about this. And so when you talk about that with other people, when you have like a backstory, it starts to kind of like, you stand out more to people and you kind of like click more to people, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And so yeah, I'd really recommend just like tapping into that. Like no matter what it is, it makes you who you are. Tap into it and like realize why you are the way you are, why you are who you are.
Yeah, all the colleges don't want like academics. They want personality at the end. So
yeah.
that's how it all works. And to get into a school like get Stanford yourself, not only do you need the academics, not only you need the personality, but you also need the extracurriculars, which you have a lot of. Like I did mention, the founder of 3 organizations. What are those 3 organizations?
Okay, so I mentioned one of them a little bit earlier. Actually, I've touched on 2, but I'm just going to go into all 3. So the first one that I've been like really passionate about recently has been my nonprofit, and we're still registering it as like a legal nonprofit, but it's like a non-for-profit organization. But we're going through the process of like legalizing it right now. But anywho, it's called Vuela. It means to fly in Spanish, stands for Visionaries Uniting and Empowering Leaders of America. Anywho, our purpose for that is basically to help high school and middle school kids receive guidance that myself and also like the mentors that I've, kind of gotten on board, and they're all college students as well, except for a few of my executive board members. They're like a couple of them are high school seniors that are just like insanely accomplished. But anyways, like the mentors that are mentoring these kids from middle school and high school right now are just doing high school. They are just so insanely accomplished, and they offer like such good insight as to how to progress throughout your young life, especially if you're passionate about getting involved and you're passionate about like being a high achiever and just like making the most that you can out of your youth, both like for yourself but also for other people in your community. And so my purpose with making that organization was really to like help empower these kids and teach them like you're not alone and you have so many more resources at your disposal than you realize. And also if you just tap into your creativity a little bit, not only will your applications become stellar, but also like the impact that you make, the person that you are, and the things you get involved with will suddenly just grow tenfold. It becomes so much more authentic, and you really start to tap into things that you're actually passionate about when you just kind of know how. And so a lot of people, like, they don't really grow up like with a blueprint or like a roadmap, with how to get into a good college or how to find your passion in life. And so that's like exactly like as someone who has that with that, like I feel like now that kind of looking back now that I have hindsight, I can really sort of start to piece together like what I did in high school and what like my friends that were also really motivated did in high school. And I just kind of want to channel that into like advice to give these people, these high schoolers who are also looking to just become the best versions of themselves and get involved and make impact in their communities. So that's what I'm like doing with my nonprofit right now. Again, we're running like a summer internship at the moment that's kind of made as like we're trying to make like an international opportunity database that has just like a ton of extracurriculars and awards that you can apply to for like ideas and whatnot for people that are kind of looking for opportunities. And so we're doing that at the moment. We're also just offering like a lot of mentorship, and we actually have applications open right now. So if you're interested, check out at vuela.youth on Instagram. Yeah.
Loki, I might check it out myself. It sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm posting the ad today for like the application, so you should see it like later. But anywho, would highly recommend. The people I have involved are just like stellar, especially my executive board. Like we all come from just such diverse backgrounds, and we have such diverse life experiences, and so I feel like we're all able to offer really a diverse range of like sets of advice and whatnot. So that's like my nonprofit right now. I'm also inviting like some guest speakers and whatnot in the future, like politicians, authors, and things like that. I have like a lot of workshop ideas, so like like to be continued on that. But anywho, that's my nonprofit, and I'm like really growing it right now. My other 2 organizations that I founded were school-based. So the first one, and this was honestly like my biggest extracurricular throughout high school, I would say, aside from like Vuela, because I kind of started that towards the latter end of my high school career. But Hispanic Youth Leadership Council was a club that I founded my sophomore year, and I actually had the idea for my freshman year. And the reason I wanted to start that club was because my school, again, like I live in California, specifically Southern California, which is very close to LA. And so in my community, there's like a lot of Hispanic and Latinx people. And so that also applies to my school. Like my high school is over 50% Hispanic/Latinx. And so even though like that demographic is so prevalent at my school, like when I walk through the halls of my campus, I feel like I belong there. You know, I feel like, okay, I see people who look like me. I see people who have similar backgrounds as me. Like I just feel like I belong here. But then when it came to my classes, my freshman year especially, again, like I've always been like very academically motivated. And so my freshman year was like the first year in my entire life that I got to actually pick my classes, and especially like pick classes that are on a different level than other students. And so I picked like, you know, the advanced ones. I picked like accelerated biology, accelerated English, heavy on English. I loved English, like especially at the beginning of my high school career. And so anyways, I took those advanced classes. And for the first time, like in my entire life, I felt isolated and I felt different for being Hispanic. And so because I was like often one of only 5 kids or so in each of my advanced classes out of like 30 kids in each class. And mind you, again, like thinking about the school demographic, over 50% of us are Hispanic. And so just kind of thinking about like the ratio there when it came to like advanced classes and even like extracurriculars as well. I was also like one of, if not the only like Hispanic member a lot of the time. I noticed that, and I felt like there was just such a lack of awareness about, you know, that pattern throughout, especially my early high school career. And so because of that, not only like were a lot of people who looked like me and who came from the similar backgrounds as me just not really like, they kind of felt like unwelcome in those spaces just because there was like not enough representation in those spaces, but also the people in those spaces, like my classmates, even my teachers, like sometimes gave kind of out of pocket comments to me or like my other Hispanic peers in those advanced classes or like, you know, in those clubs saying like, oh, like I'm surprised you're in my class because you're Hispanic. Like I've gotten that comment before. Or like, you know, you're actually really smart for a Hispanic student. Like those sorts of comments, you know. And so for sure. And you know, even like I'm thinking of like my peers, like it was kind of unintentional, but I felt very isolated from them, and sometimes like it felt as though I wasn't from this because I wasn't from the same background as them. And so, you know, throughout my freshman year, yeah, it was tough, but like throughout my freshman year, I really kind of started to like notice that and become more aware of it. And it kind of resulted in me like developing a really strong sense of imposter syndrome. And I wrote about this a lot on like my college applications and whatnot, because it was like my biggest driving purpose throughout high school was to kind of dismantle that sense of imposter syndrome, like throughout both myself, but also other people in my community that looked like me, that came from similar backgrounds. And so, you know, towards the end of my freshman year, I'll always remember there was this one senior, and she was like in ASB, like I was at the time. And she was also like the head of our school's magazine or journal. And so she wrote an article on something called the Hispanic Student Achievement Gap. And she talked about how, like, I had never heard that phrase before. I'd never heard what that was. I didn't even know that was like a thing. I thought it was just kind of like a phenomenon that was happening at my school for whatever reason. I wasn't really thinking that deeply into it. And so she talked about like all the systemic, like, you know, disparities that the Hispanic community is faced with. And also like why she went through the same exact experience that I had throughout my freshman year, but except all throughout high school, because she was also a very motivated person. She goes to UCLA now. And so, you know, she was like always very academically and leadership wise, like very motivated. And so she had like the same experience that I did. One of 5 kids in like classes of over 30 plus that were Hispanic, even though, you know, our school was over 50% Hispanic. There was just like a very big disparity there. And so she kind of talks about like how isolating that felt and how she experienced imposter syndrome and how there needs to be more representation. I just like, when I read that, I remember I was in Ono, Hawaii with my dad that day. I was just like getting lunch, right? And I read that and I just like started breaking down like at the table in front of like, you know, in the middle of like just like the little restaurant lobby. And so I just like, that was like a really big turning point for me. And so I decided like, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this like experience. I'm not the only one that's feeling like discriminated against or like othered because I'm in these spaces. And so I want to do something about it, you know, because like this girl who's a senior, who's on her way out, she left like this impact and legacy behind by being the first person that's ever said something about that in my community. And so I was like, I'm going to carry on her legacy and literally do something about it, because like people are going to forget about this and they're going to push it under the rug if someone doesn't do something about it. And so I decided, I rallied together like the other like 5 kids that I saw in like my advanced classes that were also Hispanic, that I'd already kind of like become friends with. And I was like, hey, did you read the article? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, do you want to do something about it? And they were like, yeah. And then I was like, I have an idea. And so I wanted to start a club. And so I started a club. Again, it's called Hispanic Youth Leadership Council. The abbreviated name is called HYLC. It's its acronym. And it's just, I don't know. I enjoyed saying that. So I'm just going to call it that from here on out to avoid like the mouthful. But anywho, that was like my biggest like passion throughout high school, was really like making other people feel seen, and also telling my story and making people feel like, oh, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And there's other people out here that, even though there's like not that many of us, there are people out here who look like me, or that, sound like me, or that come from similar backgrounds as me, that are also motivated, and that are also in these classes, and that are also in these clubs, and that also want to make impact on people, but that also feel like an imposter sometimes. And so, I feel like because I created that club, I just had such a really like loving and supportive community within my school, and I kind of created like that little pocket, and kind of like, in a sense, it was kind of a support group, because it was such a prevalent phenomenon at my school, especially like as a freshman, like as a younger high schooler. Exactly. And so because people started to talk about it, and like because like that one senior had written that article, we kind of kept like her word and like her legacy alive, and we kept that conversation going and kept that dialogue going. And so we did like a lot of volunteering events in our community, specifically in like Hispanic prevalent communities, and also like for Hispanic or like Latinx organizations. We actually, one of my internships that I mentioned earlier was through, actually you mentioned it, was through a state senate campaign. And so I partnered like with my club, and I had a lot of my club members get involved too, because I found that opportunity, and I was like, hey, you guys should get involved. It's really cool. She's Hispanic. She's running for state senate, and she was a council member from our city. And so I was like, you know what, like this is like great representation right here. Like this is a really good opportunity.
Perfectly, exactly.
Yeah. And so we did a lot of things like that. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity. Like, even though I kind of created that myself, like that would have never happened if someone hadn't spoken up about it. And I cannot imagine where my life would be right now if I hadn't started that club. Specifically, like if someone hadn't spoken up about like imposter syndrome and feeling like othered in, spaces like that. And so that was really like, again, like my driving force throughout high school. And honestly, it kind of created like a domino effect. And because I started that organization, I started to kind of trickle away from like organizations that were very mentally draining to me, that weren't allowing me to make impact, and kind of naturally, like I started to be drawn towards, more impactful communities and more uplifting organizations. And even like I was in a really toxic environment my sophomore year, like through one of the organizations I was involved with. And so when I left that group, I ended up getting involved with like track and cross country. And even though I ended up quitting because I had really bad injuries because of it, I loved running, but I loved the people that I ran with more, because like they were so uplifting, and being in uplifting environments really makes you feel like, you can do anything. Exactly. And so it's really about putting, again, like I mentioned earlier, like it's about your environment. You are who you surround yourself with. And so when you surround yourself with people that are like-minded or that are uplifting, then your life is just going to be like so much better because of that. And you're going to be more motivated to like make impact and, chase your dreams and do what you want to achieve. But anyways, that was my second organization. It was a club, and that was generally like my pride and joy. Like that was my baby throughout high school. And so, it was just like, on paper it sounds like, oh, it's just a school club. But then when you hear about like the backstory, it's like, oh wow, like that, like there's actually like lore behind this, and there's a reason as to why this was created. So yeah, that was like, again, like my baby throughout high school. And so I'm really fortunate that I got to do that, and I feel like because of that I was able to impact a lot of people by telling my story, and also just getting involved and helping people feel like, oh, you can get involved too. And so yeah, and then by the end of high school, like I mentioned that there was like roughly like I was typically like one of 5 Hispanic kids in my classes that were advanced. By the end of high school I was like one of 9, and so we made impact. It was a lot of them were like people, they were like a lot of people that were involved in like my club and whatnot, or like that I knew. And so, I don't want to say it was like directly because of that club, but at the end of the day, like every little factor that goes into your life, especially that's uplifting, counts. And that really like, can make you, it can turn you into a person that you'd never really expect yourself to be. So anyways, grateful for that opportunity.
Definitely.
And then my third organization, sorry to yap a lot, but this one's kind
You're
of
good. You're good.
shorter because I started this one towards the end of my senior year. But it was basically called Special Education Inclusion Council, and
Yes.
I started that organization because my sister has really severe autism. She's 15 years old, and I love her to death. But, growing up, I'd always noticed, again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm really passionate about education policy. This is one of the reasons why, because I grew up with a sister who was very neglected by the system. Because like I knew firsthand, like, all the struggles that went through at home, how difficult it was to like, care for a special needs kid. And so like seeing how the school system treated her too, and how the school system like, kind of treated her classmates, how they had like a lack of opportunities for them, how they kind of like pushed them to the side of the school, like into like a little corner where no one would see them, how they brought them out at times where no one else was like around, and how they never like spotlighted them, how they never, had like any formal education in any classes, not even health class, but like the sorts of mental conditions that they undergo. And so I felt like, growing up, I knew a lot about the special education community because my sister is in the special education community. But had I not been in that environment, like I wouldn't have known a thing about it. And
That's
it
correct.
really it makes me it made me really sad, like knowing that so many kids, especially like high school aged, are so insensitive towards special ed community. Especially like, they throw out like the R slur, or, they just casually like laugh at them in the hallways, or like they make fun of them. And I feel like you don't understand the half of what they go through every day. And you don't understand like, what their families go through and like who they are as a person. They're just as much of a person as you are. And so, yeah, like they might be different from you, but they're not any less than you. Like you are not better than them because you are a typical kid. And so anyways, I founded that like because of that. I really want to do something about that in my community. And I was like, you know what, like I've done a lot with the Hispanic community throughout high school. What can I do for this community that I've always been passionate about that I've just never really acted on? And so I decided to start like something with my district because I had kind of gotten to talking with a lot of district officials at that time, mostly because I was also delegate through my school for California Girl State. And so I had kind of gotten close to some of the district officials like in my community. And so I was like, I kind of want to start this. Like, would this be possible? And they were like, yeah. And so I kind of got a group of kids together like from throughout like a couple of high schools in my district. And basically we sort of planned out like a lot of spirit days and whatnot, and like awareness weeks and things like that. And because it was like a new organization, and it kind of like Autism Awareness Month specifically happened like towards the end of my year, we didn't get to do like as much as I wanted to, but I did get that conversation going, and we had a couple spirit days because of that. And so I actually have like a whole like blueprint now that I was able to work on like throughout my term like leading that organization. And so now I'm kind of like I'm giving it to like everyone that's still in high school in my district.
Exactly.
And I'm really hoping they can kind of carry that on and, really raise awareness about the special ed community, just because like coming from a background as the older sister of someone that's in the special ed community, I just know firsthand like how important that awareness is and how very necessary it is, especially because like so many people are so insensitive and also just like uneducated about what the community is, who they are, and how to really like understand what is correct to say and how to talk to them, how to talk about them, and just reconciling with the fact like they are just as much of a human as you are. And so yeah, anyways, very passionate about those causes, but I'm just really grateful that I had the opportunity to surround myself with the people that I did throughout high school, because even if I'd had those passions, because I always had, it just like they kind of like manifested throughout high school, but at the end of the day, the organizations that I came up with would not have happened if I wasn't surrounded by the people that I was surrounded by, if I hadn't grown up the way I had. And so I'm really grateful, like even though sometimes like I had to go through some hard experiences growing up because of like everything I mentioned to you, I'm grateful that they happened, because I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have been able to impact the people that I have if, I hadn't gone through those things. So yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I could definitely tell that you have a true passion for all three of them, truly, because you said great words about everything. You have, let me tell you right now, you have really good storytelling skills. Like,
thank you.
Like, really, truly, that's like crazy, I can't really relate on like the scale of like, because all of my classes, I take advanced classes too.
Yeah.
I have the complete opposite problem from you. My classes are all Indian kids. Like I'm telling you, it's like I need to take like low key like some easier classes just so I can, because I step into like AP Bio, and don't get me wrong, like all of my friends are of Asian descent, like they're all
Yeah.
South Asians, so it's like not bad. But I step into AP Bio, all in like almost everyone in there is an Indian kid. Like it's like I'm trying to, like I don't have that problem, so but
Yeah.
like it is something. I remember like elementary school. When I went to school in Memphis, I was one of like the only Indian kids in the like that area. And like especially like during freshman year, I took lifetime wellness as a mandatory class. That was I was like one of 3 Indian kids in my class. So it was like that environment, I feel like I can, connect with you, because I'll be honest, Indians, like the racism towards, Indians
And yeah,
it's
it's
bad.
bad. It's bad.
Yeah,
I know.
it's bad.
And like at my school, like again, like most of us at my school, you're either Hispanic or East Asian, like most of the time. And so,
Exactly.
at my school, we probably had like, I knew one Indian kid. Like I'm being dead serious. Out of like the 1,600 that went to my school,
Oh,
and that
shoot.
was the only kid that I met that was from Indian descent throughout all of high school that was at my
Yeah.
school specifically. But no, I feel you. Like even when you're in spaces where you might feel like you do belong, like there's a lot of kids that do look like you. At the same time, it's kind of like, why is this the case? And I feel like when I think about that, I kind of tend to think about like the emphasis on certain things within certain communities. And so I feel like when I think about those environments that might feel like, kind of uniform in some sense, in some way, shape, or form, I try to think about like how can we improve representation to like make more people from different backgrounds feel as though they're like welcome to get involved with those spaces. And like that goes both ways, like, vice versa. Like I could go into like a whole tangent on that, but I think that there's always more representation that's needed in like every facet of life, especially when it comes to like high school and, getting involved with things like that, especially like advanced classes and whatnot. So, it's nice to see like other people relate in some way, shape, or form. Like they've seen like similar trends at their schools, not because it's like good that those things are happening, but also it's just because like it's nice and it's reassuring knowing that like you're not alone and that it's not like a singular pattern. It's like it's a systemic thing and it happens everywhere.
Exactly. No, 100%, 100%. Sometimes I really wish that I had less Indian friends too, because like, I want to see diversity. Like,
I know what you mean.
it would be
Yeah.
nice. It would be nice.
Even like again, like coming from my perspective, like all of my friends are either Asian or Hispanic, and
Exactly.
so I have like no friends that are African American or white. And so I'm excited, like that's one thing I'm really excited about, like when it comes to college, because well actually no, I take that back. I do have friends that are African American and white, but they're outside of school. Like they're mostly like Coke scholars or like people that I've met like through other programs. But
Exactly. That's
anyways,
me too, mostly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like again, like going back to that, like I'm really excited about college because of that, because I feel like I'm really ready and like excited to be in a more diverse group of people and like just pool of people and like meet people from such different backgrounds than me, because I feel like
Exactly.
you get so much more out of life when you surround yourself with people that are different than you. Like it's always good to surround yourself with people that are like similar to you in some way, shape, or form, especially just like for that cultural connection as well and like upbringing connection. But at the same time, like it's really good to learn about other perspectives and other ways of thinking and ways of life that other people have lived through. So yeah.
Exactly. And that's like your main focus with Vuela.
Yeah.
With Vuela, that's basically like your main drive, to give everybody a chance at, some sort of advice in their life. Doesn't matter background, ethnicity, gender. It doesn't matter.
Even like geographic location. Like we have a mentee from Pakistan. So
Shoot.
yeah, pretty
So
cool.
how would that, like you were saying that you were planning on, bringing in like people and all that. So would that all be online through Zoom?
Yeah. So the entire program is actually online. And so we do everything on Zoom. Like I send everything on Google and Gmail. Like that's where I send them all my instructions and whatnot. And we host every single workshop session like throughout the summer internship on Zoom. And then mentors and mentees meet with each other on Zoom, like on their own accord, like whenever they're both available. I don't know if you've heard of Matriculate. Have you heard of Matriculate?
No.
No? Okay, this is good. I was going to explain it anyways in case anyone that's like listening hasn't heard of it. Basically what Matriculate is an organization that offers, like, it's similar to Vuela but like different at the same time. But basically it's an organization that pairs you with a college advisor, someone that's currently in college, that's gone through the college application process, and it's specifically made for you to get advice, like one-on-one advice from someone who's in college already. going into the college application process, and also
Yeah.
like they help you throughout the process as well. I was personally a matriculate, and I really loved it, and it kind of served as like in some sense like some inspiration for Vuela, like with the one-on-one mentor and mentee type thing. But other than that, like we're different because we focus on like a lot more things other than just college applications. Like it's mainly about getting involved, but also like applications. But anyways, like just thinking about like that model, I really enjoyed the fact that like I could meet with my mentor whenever we were both available. And so I liked that model because it kind of felt like you have like a one-on-one relationship with this person, and like you can really kind of ask them anything, because you tend to feel more like nervous or like, oh, like should I ask this when you're in a big group, or like you're kind of scared like your question might sound dumb, or you're gonna take up too much of their time.
Well, one-on-one is different.
Yes,
exactly.
The one-on-one component really like allows you to tap into your true questions and your true like curiosities and get like that very personalized advice. And so it's also why I started doing consulting, but especially through like the mentorship, like I just love seeing like my mentors and mentees like connect. And when they're in that one-on-one environment, they tend to open up so much more, and you learn so much more about them like when they're face to face with someone, as opposed to like in a big group of like 50 people on a Zoom meeting where they might be kind of more intimidated to speak up. And so yeah, like I personally really like that component of the program. But yeah, it's all online, and we even do like monthly workshops. Okay, right now because we're doing the summer internship, we're doing like a couple a week, so like 1 to 2 workshops a week. And like some examples that I've done so far have been like getting involved, but like by thinking outside the box. So for example, like that workshop was on like, instead of like feeling like if you're confined to like a certain classes like at your school, if you feel as though they're not like allowing you to explore your interests academically, take dual enrollment classes. Think outside the box, like get involved outside. You're not confined to just what's inside your school. And although it kind of feels like it can feel kind of unfortunate that you have to like put in that extra effort as opposed to just being in front of you, but honestly, I've always felt like when I go above and beyond and I put that extra effort in to find external opportunities, I feel like I learn so much more from those. And I feel like all the more accomplished because like I force myself to kind of be in those spaces. Like I push myself to be in those spaces as opposed to just kind of like stumbling upon them in my school and just getting involved because I felt like it, So I feel like there's so many ways you can get involved. And I said the same thing about extracurriculars as well. Like you don't necessarily have to just get involved with the clubs that are at your school. You don't have to join ASB, student government, Key Club, just because, or NHS, whatever it may be, just because everything else in that. ASB is basically student government. It's called Associated Student Body. That's what it's called at my school, but student government. You don't have to feel confined by what's available at your school, because even though yes, like that makes up a lot of the opportunities that you're surrounded with, at the same time you can do 2 things or 3 things. 1, you can create your own opportunities. 2, you can go outside of your school and look for other opportunities that are available like online or even like in your local community. But 3, you could choose to do nothing, and you could choose to feel like confined by your circumstances. And in life, like a lot of things are not fair, and like you go in, a lot of people are more disadvantaged than others. But when you're in like spaces, especially that are underprivileged, like for example, again, I went to an underfunded public high school, but like look at where I am now. Like I was able to create my own projects, my own initiatives. And don't get me wrong, like I loved the clubs that I was in throughout high school. Like I would never tell people to not join clubs, but you need to kind of like put yourself in environments or create your own environments that make you feel more fulfilled and make you like allow you to kind of explore your passions more in depth. If you feel as though the ones at your own school or in your own like immediate community, essentially like things that are handed to you, are insufficient for your learning and like your growth and also the impact that you want to make. So yeah, that's kind of like my goal with the program.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like that's like with what you mentioned earlier, the not your nonprofit, but the other one, Matriculate. I've heard of that, but there was one of the Coke Scholars recently started a mentorship program, a free mentorship program.
Aspire.
Yeah, my God, I actually was fortunate enough myself to be selected as a part of the first ever cohort of the Inspire Mentorship Program, which I'm super duper like thankful for.
Anjali is the Coke Scholar. She's awesome. Yeah, like if anyone listening is interested in joining those things, like I would highly recommend like Matriculate, Vuela, or Aspire. Like those are really great programs. I'd really highly recommend.
Exactly. I'll be applying to Vuela. I need as much advice as I can for like college. I'll be so honest.
Yeah.
Absolutely cooked.
I would really highly recommend getting advice from like multiple different sources. You
Yes.
know, like again, like we were talking about this earlier, like before we started recording, but like there's so many resources online, like so many college creators, so many people just kind of give you advice on the college application process that, you know, it can get a little overwhelming at times, but also it's so good to hear like different things from different people and just sort of like put all the little puzzle pieces together that work right for you and create like your specific formula to, you know, getting into college or, you know, achieving things you want to achieve based on your upbringing, your background, your preferences, you know, whatever works for you, and just kind of like culminating all of that into like this perfect little like formula that, you know, might not work for other people, but it works for you. So, you know,
Exactly.
getting a lot of different opinions can be really good, and just like hearing about like a lot of other people's experiences can also be like really insightful as well.
Yes. Yes, 100%.
Mhm.
100%. But you know, and then also you have, you know, your district special education including the council, obviously, like you did mention, you have seen, you know, special education firsthand with your sister. So does it, like, when you say district, does it have anything to do with like your like local government, anything like that?
Not really. It's like, so my school district, yeah, school district.
I
Should
mean,
have
it have
mentioned that
anything
earlier.
with this with the
What was
school
that?
board? Does it have to do
Yeah,
anything with the
like
school
the
board?
school board.
Okay.
But, you know, we also had like some politicians like come in occasionally, but like, you know, overall, like just thinking about like the district, like it was with my school district. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And obviously, you, as the founder of 3 organizations, you gotta have at least one crazy story from any of those. So if you are able to spill any tea, you
That's a
know,
good question. I'm
that's
trying to think. I feel like, oh, this is actually a really good question. I can't really think of like any crazy stories. You know, you would think I would have some, and I feel like there's been like occasional like little shenanigans or like things that kind of like, you know, go awry, like when it comes to leadership, because that happens like all the time. Like the biggest thing I learned about leadership is nothing ever goes to plan. Something always happens, for
yeah.
better or worse. But you know, they're learning experiences. But honestly, I can't really think of anything. But I would say, okay, this isn't it's not like tea, but something that I've really enjoyed seeing is seeing people that like kind of just stumbled across our club or like our organization. For example, I'll give you 2 examples. One was through HYLC, again, like my school club, Hispanic Youth
Yes.
Leadership Council.
Yes.
And like I hosted it in my freshman math class. Like every meeting was in my freshman math class because I really connected with my freshman math teacher. And so I'm not a math guru or anything, but he was cool. And so I asked him to be my advisor. And basically, again, all throughout high school, we hosted meetings there. And so when I was like a senior, there were some new kids that were in his class that were new freshmen. And they weren't even like motivated or anything. Like they were just there. They ate lunch in there, right? I used to eat lunch in like classrooms as well. But at some point I stopped getting a lunch because I had to always go to meetings or like lead meetings. So I basically had to like eat while I was talking or like eat afterwards. But anywho, I noticed there was always like a lot of kids in his classroom. And so they were just kind of there for our meetings, right? And so like at some point they were like, yo, what does this club like do? And I was like, oh. And then I just went on like a whole tangent about like everything that we do and like, you know, why I started it. And they were like, oh, that's really sick. Like, can I low-key join? And I was like, sure. And then, you know, I even got, my school has this thing called snack bags, where basically like every club gets a week to sell like snack bags and fundraise for your club. And so we did that, right? And like one of the kids that I remember that was in that class like asked to join like that week, and so he sold like multiple bags in a few minutes. Like it was like towards the end of lunch already. And I was like, sure, like if you want to join, congratulations, you're a member. Here's some snack bags. If you want some, you can go sell them. And then he was like, oh cool, thanks. And then he's like, I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then he came back like 5 minutes later and already sold 2 bags. And he and mind you, like each bag was $5. Yeah, you had like each thing was like 50 cents or like $1 in each bag. So there was like between 5 to 10 items in each bag. So he went out and sold those in like 5 minutes. And so I was like, nice. And so anyways, he applied to the cabinet for this coming year. And so I'm excited to see like what happens with him and like all the other like kind of kids like that kind of stumbled upon us but ended up really liking the club. And then same thing happened like with Vuela. Ironically, kind of exposing myself here, but I'm a little bit of a Roblox addict. And so I have a couple online friends, and basically like one time, like when I was like first talking to them, or like one of the first like voice calls we had, they were like asking me like, oh, like you just graduated, right? And I was like, oh yeah. And like they were like, wait, so where are you going to college? I'm like, I'm going to Stanford. They're like, pardon? And then so they asked me like more information about like everything that I've been involved with. And then at some point they were like, just keep talking, bro. Like, this is like a podcast. I'm just gonna like be on mute and listen to you. And so like at the end of like me going on like a tangent about like my resume and like everything that I'd done throughout high school, they were like, so how do I like get advice from you? And so like they started like talking to me, like asking me a couple questions. And I was like, guys, I run like a whole organization like that's you know, centered around like giving people advice. Yeah. And so they were like, can I join? And I was like, here's the application, like you can fill it out in like 5 minutes. And so they filled it out, and now they're actually like some of my most dedicated mentees. And so it's funny, like because they're what was that?
It all starts from Roblox.
Exactly. So guys, sometimes you meet like the most unexpected people in the most unexpected places. And you know, like those kids, like they're funny, don't get me wrong, but like, you know, they weren't really like motivated to like get involved with things like that like before, you know, being introduced to it. And so sometimes it just kind of takes like representation, or like, you know, hearing about something to really like, and like, you know, hearing about like results to really feel like, oh, I should get involved with this. And so, you know, I really enjoy like seeing when those people who are like, you know, maybe like less motivated, or like they don't really know like what they want to do, when they end up really like kind of just stumbling upon like something that I've started, and they're like, wait, I kind of like this. And so, and then they get involved and they actually really enjoy it. And so I guess those are like my tea stories, but yeah, nothing crazy.
It gives the best feelings at the very end. People want to like care about what you're doing, like especially like when someone comes up to me and starts to ask me about the podcast, you know, it's like, shoot, people actually like care about what I'm doing, and I'm making a difference in my community. So I 100% agree with like that feeling for sure too. And then like you said, like don't like my friends and my girlfriend, they're like big Roblox addicts. Like every single time I hop on call with my girlfriend, she like, so you want to play Roblox now? I'm like, yeah. And she's big on Roblox.
That's funny.
She plays what's those not simulator games. I forgot what they call them. Like, you know, like the Tower of Hell and all that.
Yeah, obbies.
Yeah, obbies. Yeah. She made me play like obbies, and then there was this one like 2-person obby that she had us play.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh my god, that was so bad.
That's really funny.
Like it was.
Those are tough.
Cool. There was one level I just could not get past, and we spent an hour just waiting for me to get past. I was crashing out that whole time.
That's funny. Yeah, the thing with Roblox, especially like obbies, is like when you start, like you don't want to stop. Like you're just like determined to finish it, even if you like kind of hate it. And
exactly.
Low key, making a metaphor here, like that's like the same thing with life. Low key, like sometimes you don't really want to do anything. You know, you don't really want to put yourself out there, but then like when you're already in the midst of it, you're like, no, like I already started, like I can't give up now. And then you just kind of get through it, and usually it ends up being rewarding.
I just kept dying to the point where I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I get to finish that first level, I go to the second level, and I die. And it's just the same process over and over and over and over. I'm like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Built character.
Oh my god. It built a lot of anger, that's for sure.
That's definitely true. I have like no patience anymore.
Yeah, no, those crash were bad. Those crash outs were really bad. But you know, along with you founding these 3 separate organizations, you have also interned for a good amount of, you know, organizations too, including the USC Shoah Foundation. So what is the USC Shoah Foundation, and what is like the goal behind it? What did you do a part of the foundation? Yeah,
so the USC Shoah Foundation is basically like an organization that's through USC, is like University of Southern California, not like the other ones in South Carolina. But because again, I'm from LA. But they basically have like this really big collection of testimonies from Holocaust survivors, genocide survivors, civil rights activists, and they're like on video. And it's just like this huge database. And it was actually like, I think it was spearheaded by Steven Spielberg. And so pretty cool. And so like the organization, like it's done so much humanitarian work and has done a lot in terms of like efforts to preserve, you know, those testimonies that are so essential, you know, for history, and to like really understand the gravity behind, you know, really major historical events like the Holocaust, for example, or like other genocides like the Armenian genocide, the Rwandan genocide, you know, the attacks against the Tutsi, like so many different genocides that go like often in our history books, they tend to be underplayed. And so, or even like the civil rights movement, right? Like, that's taught a decent amount in school, like when we're learning about history, but you don't really know the half of it until you hear about it from someone who truly like went through it. They lived through it. They lived through like fighting for people's rights or for their own rights. Or again, like going back to genocide, like you don't know the half of it. Like you don't even know like a tenth of it until you hear from someone who genuinely went through those like, historical experiences. And so, that's why I'm really passionate about history. Like aside from just like being really, into learning about it, I feel like my internship with the Shoah Foundation like really enabled me to learn more about history like firsthand. And just like learn like so much more in depth than you ever could from a history textbook. And so, I feel like my experience with them was just awesome. And it was really interesting seeing like testimonies from so many people that lived through such historical events that are often very like undertaught or undercovered in school. And so, throughout my internship, I had the opportunity to not only study like a lot of testimonies from like over 100 countries, but also like I got to interview someone named Elizabeth Holtzman, and she was a former congresswoman. She was actually in charge of, I think, like part of the impeachment trial for, I believe it was Nixon, which was cool to hear about. And then she was also a former Nazi prosecutor because her parents, I believe, had lived through the genocide. I don't quite remember. It's been like a long time since I researched.
The Nixon, I'll be so for real.
No, right? Yeah. It was
That's
interesting.
Cool.
It was interesting to hear about. And so, she talked a lot about like growing up, in the US and whatnot from, a perspective of someone from the Middle East. And so we talked a lot about that. And she talked a lot about how, there was a lot of like underplaying and under coverage of the Holocaust and, of other genocides as well, especially from American perspective, because there was a lot that America could have done or that we could have covered that just simply wasn't. And that was like largely because of like propaganda and lack of coverage. And so it was really interesting hearing about that from someone like from a historical perspective, from someone who lived through that, especially someone like so articulate and so accomplished, right? Like, I mean, like she was literally on like the impeachment trial for like Nixon,
Exactly.
So it was really interesting hearing about that from a firsthand perspective and getting to like actually talk to her one-on-one. And so we did like a Zoom call with that. It was really interesting. And then we also got to represent the Shoah Foundation at a couple of museums. We had like this, it was like a 9-week internship, even though it lasted like throughout the whole year. We went in like on Sundays, like once every couple weeks. And it was like, they were like for 4-hour intervals. And there was this one like kind of like field trip type weekend where basically from like Friday to Sunday we did like all day activities. And so that was like the weekend that we interviewed her, I believe. And basically we got to represent the Shoah Foundation at the Holocaust Museum in LA, and also at the Japanese American History Museum, also in LA. And so it was, again, like that's another thing that goes very like undercovered in history, because again, like that was literally like the internment camps and whatnot that, happened during World War II, by FDR during the like World War II. So that was like, it was really jarring being able to see like firsthand, like not only from, people who survived that, but also like going to museums and, seeing like artifacts from that time or seeing like pictures, or even just seeing like the dates, like the 1960s, 1950s or 40s, like they sound so far ago, or so long ago. But when you really think about it, like that wasn't even 100 years ago. That was like barely even 80 years ago,
Really?
if you think about that. Yeah. And so, there's still people that are alive from those experiences, or that, maybe are just like really old or like have just passed, and so when you get to hear about like those historical experiences from like firsthand perspectives, or even just like in-depth perspectives that like where you could really see like visually a lot of what happened, it's just so much more kind of enthralling and like educational, as opposed to just learning about it from a history textbook, because it's easy to kind of pass it off as like a story, right? Or like something that
Exactly.
like happened, but like it's like not really relevant anymore. Sometimes you don't even really realize that it was real, like it actually happened. Like seeing like the shoes of people who passed away during the Holocaust, seeing suitcases of people that were brought to internment camps during World War II, or it's, again, like hearing people's voices catch like when they talked about their experiences. It's just so different, and I feel like I would not trade that experience for the world, because I learned so much about not only like history and more about like from a global perspective, but also just like it made me a lot more sensitized towards history. And I feel like that's something that we really need in our society, like especially today, because a lot of history goes undertaught. and some things aren't taught at all. And so, when you kind of put yourself in those environments where you're hearing those sorts of things like firsthand, or you really like find an immersive way to learn about, those big historical events, it feels so much more real, and you kind of start to realize like they were just as much people as we are. And like they were like thinking, breathing, conscious human beings that went through these horrific things that I couldn't even imagine going through. And so, it was really interesting, and I got to kind of present some research that I learned like throughout, the internship at the end of the program, and that was really cool as well. But yeah, I met a lot of really cool people through that, and I'm really grateful that I got to do that throughout high school. Well, junior year specifically. Yeah.
Definitely. That's some crazy stuff. Obviously, talking to these kind of people, history plays a big role in like us, like how we shape our futures and stuff too, because we don't learn from the past, then we're just gonna repeat it in the future.
I always say that. Yeah, like if you don't look into the past, the things that happened in the past, the patterns will repeat. And
Exactly.
even looking at like right now, like, there's so many historical patterns that have had people just been like more aware of history and more like conscious of it. Like, certain things that are happening right now, or like even that have happened in the past, might not have happened the way that they did. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Like everything, like take like the genocides for example. They're all genocides, but they're like done in different ways and all that too. So there's, if we learn about those, then we can prevent, different variations happening over time too. And with work like with the Shoah Foundation, and speaking to people, especially like the Congresswoman, which you did talk about, with her work with the Nixon trial, the Nixon trial, because that's a while ago.
Yeah, I'd really highly recommend anyone listening to kind of look her up. She has a really interesting story. Elizabeth Holtzman. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like super cool. And speaking of like Congresswoman, this ain't really a part of like Congress, but you were also a part of a state senate campaign. You entered as a state senate campaign. So I mean, if you can mention who the state senator was, and what was your, especially as a high schooler working on a state senate campaign, what did your role consist of?
Yeah, so throughout high school, I've done a lot of work with my local politicians, specifically Senator Susan Rubio. She's someone that's really prevalent in my community. And again, like state senate is different than like US Senate, so it's like on a local level, but they make a lot of impact. And like honestly, throughout high school, kind of working with public officials that are local, I feel like it's kind of made me more passionate about public service, but also like on a more local level where you can really like see the results of your efforts firsthand. So anyways, I've done a lot of work with Susan Rubio, Senator Susan Rubio, throughout high school. And I also have a family friend who, again, I mentioned her earlier, like a while ago. She is on the city council for my city. And so like she's kind of happens to be a family friend. Like I probably would have found her anyways, but like she is like the sister of my mom's best friend. And so I grew up like kind of knowing a lot about like what was happening in my city, going to city events and whatnot. And so I was always kind of like interested in like city politics and like, how things worked within like local government. And so when I was a junior, it was election season. It was like at the beginning of 2024. She, like, again, the city council member, she actually works with Senator Susan Rubio, the state senator who I've done work with before. And so it was pretty cool. But anywho, I learned that she was running for state senate, and she was looking for people to volunteer and like intern for her to help her spread the word and to just like help her with her campaign. And so I was like, I would be more than happy to help you. Like I literally love like local politics. You're great. You work for the senator that I've done work for, and like obviously we have like a family connection as well. So like I know you pretty well. I can definitely speak to your character. And like aside from that, like that sound like I don't want to sound like, oh, I have connections, because like I don't. Like that was just kind of like something that happened to occur, but I'm really grateful for that experience because I learned a lot about like local politics because of that. But anywho, I helped her with her campaign and I interned for her. I was one of the youngest interns on her campaign. And essentially a lot of what I did was recruit other volunteers. And like I mentioned earlier, like her campaign was something that I really pushed to my club. I know, like, sometimes you don't really want to mix like politics with like school, especially because there's like a whole thing about like indoctrination people might worry about. But it was sort of like an opportunity that I was like opening up to my club members. And I was like, if you're interested, this is a really good opportunity to learn more about state and like local legislature. And so, and even just like marketing skills. And so I got a couple of them involved. I think I got like 20 volunteers. And so I did a lot of phone banking. I called like over 1,000 people. I think it was like roughly 1,500. I made roughly 1,500 calls throughout the span of the campaign, and that was like 8 weeks. Like it wasn't that long, or like 8-10 weeks, something like that. And so I made quite a few calls. Had a lot of other people make quite a few calls. I also got to go out in the community and canvas, and so I got to like hand out flyers and like talk about the person that was running for state senate. I got to talk about her character and also like her policies to a lot of like people in the community, constituents. We went to like local cities and whatnot as well. It wasn't just my city, where people already knew her, obviously, because she was on city council. And so that was interesting because again, this was before the 2024 presidential election, but even then it was really interesting seeing like how polarizing and like how divided people are when it comes to politics, because some people just didn't want to hear it from me. Like, I was like a teenager, like I was obviously like 16 years old, and I was like, hey, do you want to like look into this person? They were like, no, I don't like politics. Yeah, like I got a lot of like really like mean people, but I was like, I understand to like some degree, because some people just like they kind of like they don't want to involve themselves with that because it's a lot and it's like very heavy. But at the same time, like some people were just like really mean, and so that was kind of like good rejection therapy in a sense, and like maybe build character. Yeah. And so I went to that, like I did that at a park. I remember I did it at like a couple other like local events as well, and then I also went door to door like throughout my city on this one particular day with another intern of mine. We're actually really close friends. And so yeah, fun fact, I actually met a Coca-Cola Scholar because of that internship, Brandon Chang. He's in my area, so that was cool. Anyways, I don't think you've interviewed him, but like he's cool. Anyways, yeah, it was really funny. Like we just connected because he was like, you're in the area? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm also in the area. And then we were like, oh, like you like politics? I do too. You like history? I do too. And then we talked about academics. You're like, you're in 5 APs? I am too. And then it just kind of kept going. And so it was really funny. Like we ended up kind of, both becoming Coca Scholars, and like just thinking about like the acceptance rate and like the amount of people that get selected, even like all throughout California. Like what are the odds? But it was kind of funny. Anyways, yeah, I had a really good time throughout that internship, even though like the campaign like was lost, but I will say like it wasn't like overly like far, like you could see our impact. Oh, I also wrote an article for her. I don't know if you've heard of the platform called Medium, but basically you can write like articles as a rookie there, like for free. And so I'd heard about it before, and I was like, you're not really getting much coverage right now. I think it'd be cool, like would you mind like if I wrote an article on you? And then she was like, sure. And so I did, and like I don't know, I got some good reads and whatnot, and good feedback. Yeah. Anywho, I became a little journalist for like a day, and that was cool. So yeah,
fun. Bust. It is fun.
Yeah. Again, like I mentioned, I've always liked writing, and so kind of getting to like apply it to like outside of school essays, like because when it comes to essays, like you really have to sometimes limit your creativity because you're given like certain boundaries and like guidelines. But then when you get to write creatively, like you really tap into like your more you tap into your
Different
creativity. Yes, different, like like your passions, and you're able to like convey what you truly want to outside of just like certain guidelines. And so yeah, I mean, I had a really good time throughout that internship, and I definitely feel like that was like one of the like again like driving points for me, especially towards like the end of my junior year.
Exactly. Definitely. I mean, working on any sort of like local government campaign is low-key, that'd be so cool. I remember my actual first taste of broadcast journalism, like before I started this podcast. My first interview was actually with my local mayor. She was a candidate running at the time, and I was part of my school's film program, so I got to interview her there. And the thing is, she still remembers me. Like, she still remembers me pretty well. Like, the other day, there was something going on in my neighborhood. Like, my dad's a part of the neighborhood board. They set something up, and they were giving out free ice cream, right?
Oh,
so
nice.
I go to the ice cream truck trying to get my free ice cream. Someone taps me on my shoulders, like, you trying to get me ice cream? I turn around, the mayor is standing right there. Like, the mayor tapped me on my shoulder. I was like, what? I was like, oh my God. I was like, because I'm the type of guy, when I talk to people, I'm a very social guy, but I'm what I consider myself awkward social. Like, I come off awkward when I talk to people, but I'm very social. So she tapped me on the shoulder. I'm like, oh, hey, Miss Frazier. I was like startled, because it takes me a sec too. When someone taps me on the shoulder, I look over. It takes me like a good 10 seconds to process who you are. Like, it's like I don't get the name off the top of my head, especially if you tap me on the shoulder. It's like,
I'm really
even if
bad
it's
with
like,
names.
Exactly. I'm good with names. Thing is, like, if someone's tapping on the shoulder, like, even just one of my closest friends, I turn around, I'm like, I stand there for
Yeah,
like 10 seconds. I'm
yeah.
like,
I'm like, who are you?
yeah, and you just process, like, oh, shoot, I know, and then the name pops up in my head. And
Yeah,
then at that point, it just becomes awkward. And it's like, but
yeah. Gets
that's
easier
how
with
I,
time.
exactly. I'm an awkward extrovert.
Same here. Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure. I feel like again, like throughout high school, like it became easier to talk to people, but yeah, it
Yes.
just takes time and practice. But
Yes.
yeah, like
And
I don't know.
obviously, yeah, with
Yeah,
my state officer position too, I have gotten used to talking to random, people that just come up to me. Like when I was on the campaign trail, I had so many people come up to me that day and so many different stories, so many different people. Like this one girl, she came up to me, we're in Tennessee. I thought Rocky Top was, just a Tennessee thing. Apparently it's the University of Tennessee saying. So I mentioned the word Rocky Top. She's like, I hate the University of Tennessee. I'm a Kentucky fan. So we
that's fun.
started bantering about that for like 5 minutes. So
That's
it's just
fun.
like, it was like different people, different stories. And I just kept saying the same thing over and over again. So it
Yeah,
makes you, especially with like the work that you've been doing with your 3 different organizations and then all the internships that you've done, it forces you to come out of your shell.
yeah,
You
100%.
know, definitely, definitely.
Oh,
So obviously, with all of these with your 3 organizations and your work with the state senate campaign, your work with USC Shoah Foundation, and so much more that I did not get to because of that just goes to show how much work you've done because you have done so much, and in the time span, we haven't able to. Maybe who knows? Maybe we can get a part 2.
maybe
Like low key, we might need a part 2. But with
would be down.
but definitely, definitely. But with all of these accomplishments, you were named 2025 Coca-Cola Scholar. So how was that application process, applying? But more importantly above that, how was traveling? Obviously, like you mentioned, maybe it was off camera or on camera, but you did mention it was your first time coming to the East Coast. Obviously, you were a West Coast girl. So how was it traveling to the world of Coke into Atlanta, Georgia for the scholarship?
It was so great. Honestly, like I could not have even like expected what was going to happen. Applying, like I when I applied on a whim. I was like, okay, everyone applies a Coke scholarship, but like let's be real, I'm not getting this. It's like a super low acceptance rate. And then I became a semi-finalist and I was like, wait. And I remember I was like coming out of my econ class and I was about to go home for the day. And I was like washing my hands in the bathroom. And then I was like, I got the notification that was semi-finalist and I was just so floored because I had never like, you know, I would have never expected to get past the first phase, like just by itself. But then, even like in the past, like I had never reached a phase of something with such a selective acceptance rate before. And so, at that point I was like 1%. And then they cut it down from like over 1,000 semifinalists. It was like, I remember it was 1,337 or something like that, or 36 out of like 105,000 applicants. And then
Exactly.
they cut it down to like the regional finalists, and I was like, oh my gosh, I literally made it past the semifinalist round. Like, I'm not gonna let myself screw up this interview. And then, I feel like my interview was low key like one of the best interviews I ever had. And then because I was locked in, like I was like, I really want this scholarship, like not just for the scholarship itself, for the community, like for the people, because I know that whoever I'm gonna get in contact with, like if I get this opportunity, it's gonna be so awesome.
Exactly.
And so anyways, yeah, and so I was just like so excited. But even when I got the scholarship, like I couldn't have imagined like anything close to how amazing the traveling to the world of Coke itself and like being in Georgia with my fellow scholars would have been. I growing up and like throughout high school, like I'd done a lot of opportunities and I've done a lot of programs and whatnot. Like for example, Girls State, that was a really good program. Like just other things as well, like internships, like I mentioned earlier. But like the people that are Coke scholars are just so insanely like high caliber, and I had never once related to a group of people more than I related to the Coke scholars.
Shoot.
Yeah, like when I was like, even like at school, right? Like I told you earlier, like I have like a great friend group. Like, I feel really grateful that I went to school where I did and that I know the people that I do. But like genuinely, like I always kind of felt like, like I stuck out like a sore thumb at times, like in certain places, like even again, like at my school, like with the imposter syndrome and whatnot, or even like at Girls State, like I had a lovely experience there, but I found it kind of hard to connect with people, just because like I was kind of a little more introverted at the time, and I was like more scared to like connect and whatnot. But everyone at Coke like just understood each other like on such a deep level that I can't even like describe it. Like everyone there was just so authentic and so genuine. It was so similar to me, yet so different at the same time. Different to the point that it was just like, it was really interesting learning about them. Not different to the point where we couldn't relate on like morals, or, you know, even though we had different experiences, we also had really similar ones. And so like we'd all been on this like grind for like years at this point. And, you know, just meeting each other and meeting people that were so like-minded and like just so insanely supportive and understanding. Like I had just never been in an environment that was so like, you know, that I felt so at home in. And so, like, I was always searching for that, like, with programs, with internships, you know, even though I had great times with everything that I did, especially, like, my internships and, like, you know, summer programs, like Girl State, like, Coke is just different. Like, it was just insane. And, you know, I kind of expected it to be kind of like any other, like, program, you know, and even, like, with the Coke Scholars, like, I low-key expected everyone to be, like, stuck up or, like, you know,
Yeah.
like, just because they were so accomplished. But, like, when I got there, you know, I'm like, no, but they're, like, you know, they're leaders. Like, maybe, hopefully they'll be kind of cool. Like, nothing could have prepared me for, like, how cool everyone was. Like, I genuinely have really lifelong friends. And, you know, even some of my executive board, like, on Vuela, is literally, like, from Coke. And so, you know,
Shoot.
I just met so many great people there. And, yeah, like, we had a really good time. And I feel really grateful for everything the Coke Foundation, like, provided us. You know, like, I remember throughout the scholarship weekend, we actually got, like, an unlimited supply of Coca-Cola products.
Yes,
Like,
I
they
heard.
had, yeah, I figured someone would have told you at this point. But there was, like, fridges everywhere we went with just Coke, Sprite, Sony water. Like,
Yes.
everything was a Coke product. And, you know, it went to the point that we were so proud of being Coke Scholars that we considered Pepsi a slur now. And so,
Shoot.
like, we censor Pepsi. And so
Shoot.
we say the P word instead of Pepsi.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, we don't
yeah,
mess with Pepsi around here.
we don't mess
We don't
with
mess
Pepsi.
with Pepsi. I'm trying to bleep out
Yes.
I'm trying to. Yeah, the rest of the word. Yeah, we don't mess with that. We don't mess with that. But that's what a lot of people that personally I can relate to you, you know, and even though I wasn't a Coke Scholar this year, you know, DMing everyone. I was like I DM'd everyone, right? I got halfway through, I was like, shoot, what if none of them have personalities? I'm not going to be able to talk to
Yeah.
any of them. And I was like, oh, shoot, I'm already halfway through. Might as well just DM everybody else and, you know,
Yeah.
reach out. And I hop on the first couple of times, like, I was like super nervous. I was like, dude, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what if they're not cool and stuff? And then
Yeah.
it's the most opposite thing I've ever, like, everybody, like, was passionate. It's like they were normal
Yeah.
people.
Exactly.
You know, I told you this off call, but me and my friend, we were talking about how it's like we can truly tell between a Coke Scholar, like, because like he edits like my clips for me, and he's
Yeah.
like he truly, like, we all see the passion that all of y'all have, and y'all are still normal people at the end of the day. Like, y'all are just
Yeah.
very passionate about what you do. So I really feel like, and I truly do mean this, like, Coke did a good job distinguishing, you know, the NPCs, the people that are just competitive and you're trying to just do stuff for work, versus the actual Coke Scholars who all really care about what they do at the end of the day, including yourself.
100%.
You know,
Thank you.
definitely.
Yeah, I feel so insanely grateful to be a Coke Scholar. Like, genuinely, again, like, I would have never expected to be, like, even had the opportunity to be a semi-finalist, much less original finalist, and even less a Coke Scholar. And so,
Exactly.
you know, I feel really grateful to be in this community. But yeah, like, again, like, it really, like, you know, supersedes your expectations.
Yes.
Because you go into it and you're like even when it came to Ivy League schools, I was like also really scared to even apply. Like, honestly, I didn't even apply to Harvard because I felt like, oh, everyone's gonna be like, you know, like, they're gonna be all stuck up and whatnot. They're gonna be pretentious. But then, you know, I applied to like Yale, Columbia, and UPenn just because I was like, okay, like, they're test optional, I'm just gonna apply there. And so,
Exactly.
you know, low-key regret not applying to Harvard now just because of like that, you know, stereotype. But yeah, like, I met so many great people. Like, for example, like when I went to Bulldog Days, when I got into Yale, fun fact, got a likely letter, so I found out about it early, and then I got to meet a few people before then. But anywho, yeah, so like people like that, like people that are really high achievers, like they really supersede your expectations. But when it comes to Coke Scholars, like, just another level. Like, you know, people are just so authentic, and genuinely, you would not be a Coke Scholar if you were an NPC.
Exactly.
And so,
That's
yeah,
what I
like,
truly believe.
so, and they're not, like, I really don't feel like, you know, Coke Scholars are, like, pretentious. Like, you know, they have every reason to be, like, they have, like, so many accomplishments, but they're not. And, like, they're just the most humble people I know. And,
Exactly.
yeah, I just love being a Coke Scholar.
You know, obviously, like, the Coke Scholar application as of today, August 8th, it is out. It's been out for a week. I opened that thing first day because it's like I've talked to so many of y'all. I'm friends with a good bunch of y'all. If I don't apply to this, now I'm just gonna be mad at myself at the end.
No, yeah, I was gonna ask, like, you better apply for the
Yeah,
scholarship.
I opened the
Yeah.
application. I'm going through that first round. Oh my God, I almost crashed out that day. There was so much.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it
It's
was
a long
crazy.
application.
It was crazy.
I will say the first stage is the least of it. It's like
Oh, good.
you put in general information.
Yes.
You fill out, like, you don't
Schools
have
and stuff,
to.
yeah.
Yes, like just like general information. You don't have to write essays.
Yes.
If you become a semi-finalist, then you have like 3 weeks to write 4, or like I think it was 4 essays. No, it was like
Oh,
multiple
God.
essays and then multiple, like, different short answers. Honestly, like, I remember I literally stayed home the day the application was due because I wanted to finish it and I wanted to make sure it was really good quality.
That's
And
valid.
so
That's valid.
fun fact. Okay, not the day the first round application was due. I finished that one, like, I think the day of, or like the day before. I remember I finished it in my art class. And I was like, I'm not getting this, but I'm submitting it anyways. I remember, yeah, like when I was the semifinalist and I was finishing up my essays, I was like, I am not gonna half do these. Like, I'm gonna make sure these are like my best quality work. And this, again, like, this was in the middle of college app season, so I didn't really have time to like even work on college essays. So I was like, I need to do this. And so I remember literally the day before it was due was the day of the election. And so I was like watching like all the live like footage, like the Red Mirage and like all those, all those
Yeah.
different things happening with like, the votes. And so I was like doing that while literally like typing up my essays. And then I remember I woke up the next morning and I was like so sad because of everything that happened that day. But then I was like, nope, I need to keep going. And I remember I made like an emo post on Instagram about the election results. And I was like, no, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to finish this freaking scholarship application. And that was like low-key one of my driving forces for my essays that day. It gave me like a lot of motivation. I was running off of like anger and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be like one of those people that's like a visionary leader and that's a role model for other people, because now it's going to be a lot harder to, get past this era. Like, I don't know, the spirit of Kamala Harris must have just like entered me that day, because I was like very locked in. And so, yeah, anyways, I'm
And-
really glad I stayed home that day.
And it worked for the best because look where we are now, being
Thanks,
named a
yeah.
Coca-Cola Scholar. So definitely,
Grateful. Yeah.
definitely. But at the end of the day, why do you personally believe you were named a Coca-Cola Scholar?
I think the biggest reason would probably just be because I was very authentic in my application.
Okay.
And what I mean by authentic is, okay, well, obviously, like, you need to have the accomplishments and whatnot beforehand. So, obviously, like, I got straight A's in high school. I took 12 APs, like, more than I was even allowed to at my school. I was valedictorian. But, aside from all the academics, like, those are just, like, those are numbers. Those are grades, but what really makes you a person, what really makes you, like, a visionary leader, like, the Coke Scholarship, like, its motto is visionary leaders refreshing the world. And I feel like that's, like, so accurate, because it's really about the people that are going out into their communities and, impacting people that, or even like serving as a voice for people that might be underrepresented or maybe can't use their voices. And so I feel like that was such a big mission for me throughout high school, like before I even knew about the Coke Scholarship. It was just because that was my passion. That's what I love to do. And so I feel like because I didn't just do things to, boost my resume, but because I really chased things out of like true passion, and I knew when to say no to opportunities that weren't right for me. And I also knew, like, I knew what I was doing, in a sense. Like, I let myself try new things and be open to new things, but I knew when I had to say no to opportunities, and I knew when something was or wasn't going to be an impactful or like enriching experience for myself and for my community. And so I really I made sure to allocate my time towards doing things that I knew could really make impact. And so, I'm really glad that I did that. And I feel like that really allowed me to create this like very elaborate narrative that I've gone over today. Like, that's like kind of just scratching the surface. Like, I mean, and we've had like a 2-hour long conversation at this point. But, like I'm saying, like, I have a lot of like stories I could share, but those are like my main ones, I would say, that I've shared so far. But, I think just really drawing on my life experiences, both like my own, like I mentioned, or like facing imposter syndrome in the classroom and, in clubs and whatnot and organizations, but also like witnessing other people in my communities that are from marginalized groups, like, for example, my sister, who can't speak up for herself.
Exactly, yeah.
I took on that role of being an advocate and, you know, take, like, even though, like, again, like, before high school, like, I wouldn't really consider myself a leader. Like, I was scared to be a leader. I was scared to put myself out there. But, you know, because I really embraced whatever urge, whatever drive was in me, you know, because of COVID, because of whatever it was, like, I knew I needed to become a leader in high school, and I wasn't going to let high school pass me up without getting involved and making an impact. And so, because I think I chased that dream, and because I really was authentic with what I did, and I wasn't just doing things, you know, to boost my resume, and I really did it out of a place of passion, I think that's what really, you know, helped me stand out and really, like, not only allowed me to make impact, obviously, but allowed me to become a Coke Scholar. And that was conveyed through my essays and my extracurriculars. You know, even like thinking back to my college applications, I was really lucky and fortunate to be able to talk to some of my admissions officers, especially from Yale, because again, I got that lucky letter.
Yes.
And also from Stanford, my admissions officer, if you get into Stanford, you get a personalized letter from your admissions officer.
Oh, shoot.
A little card, it's really cute. And basically, like, they both said, and then also a couple other ones as well that I talked to, those two specifically, were like, your extracurriculars were so impressive and your essays were so inspiring. And, you know, I felt really grateful that, like, oh, you know, like, everything that I put myself through, everything that I've lived through, everything that I've done has been worth it. And, like, it's truly made impact, and it's not just like in my head. It's not just like, you know, from what I've seen, it's generally like other people literally just who have just known me like through paper. They never met me, they never seen me face to face, but they saw my passion, they saw my drive and my impact, and they realized, like, you know, like, this girl's someone who really cares and who puts effort into her community. And so, you know, yeah, I feel like because I followed those urges and like those drives to really, you know, speak up for other people, be a voice for, you know, the voiceless in a sense, and just like make impact in my community and follow my passions, was really like the biggest reason why I became a Coke Scholar, and, you know, why also, you know, I got into the colleges I did and whatnot, and I'm really grateful to be where I am.
Definitely. Obviously, that's a very key point of every interview I have done so far. Talking to anybody, they say passion is what drives you.
Yeah.
If I like to say, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, it's work. But if you are passionate about what you're doing, then it becomes more play. Not like play,
Exactly.
But, you know, time goes by faster.
I 100% agree. Again, like this summer, I was talking to you about how it's been really hectic, but I wouldn't have any other way. I technically have 2 jobs right now, on top of like running my organization. So right now, again, I'm working with YWCA as a youth advisory board co-chair. I'm also, again, like, I'm doing one-on-one consulting with a really, really cool college creator. Shameless plug for her. Her name is Fatima, at fatimas.guide on Instagram. She's really cool. You should totally book me or one of my mentors for a one-on-one consultation if you're interested. But anyways, shameless plug. But even if not, like, follow her. She has really good advice.
She does.
Anyways, or join Vuela or Aspire or matriculate. Okay, I'm done with the plugs. But anyways, yeah. And so I feel like just, you know, having those role models and whatnot, like, just, you know, going throughout my process and like working and whatnot, it never feels like work, because I'm doing things that I really love, and I genuinely, like, you know, I love impacting people and helping people and giving people advice that I wish I had. And, you know, helping them like develop skill sets and leadership skills that, you know, some people like take years to develop, and kind of just helping them like realize it within themselves and being like that person that tells them like you can do whatever you set your mind to. So yeah,
Definitely. But, you know, to end out this episode, you know, we've been talking for a good bit, and, you know, you have shown that leadership. You know, you have shown what makes you the leader you are. And the tagline of the Voice for You podcast is to empower the leaders of today and tomorrow. And as the definition of what a youth leader should be as yourself, what is some advice that you have for either me, the audience members, or anybody in general trying to become a leader in their own community?
There's this one phrase that someone who hosted me in their dorm when I went to Stanford Admit Weekend told me, and it's just been in my, like, ringing in my head ever since she told me this. So we were talking a little bit, like, just kind of going back and like reflecting on my college app process. I was telling her, like, you know, even like in high school, a really big thing that drove me forward was because I experienced imposter syndrome, and I often felt like, you know, I'm one of like very few Latinas or like Latinx Hispanic people in my advanced spaces, so like advanced classes, extracurriculars and whatnot. And so I was talking to her about that because she was also Hispanic. I was in a Hispanic themed dorm room, and basically I was talking to her about that, and I'm like, I'm a little bit scared about that. Like at Stanford, if I choose Stanford, like if you could give me like any advice, like what would it be? Like, have you experienced that here? And she's like, you know what? Yeah, like it's prevalent everywhere, as a Latina, or like as someone who is from a marginalized community. But you know what I always tell, and like sometimes I feel a little bit scared. Sometimes I feel like a little awkward speaking up in class. But what I always tell myself, and the biggest piece of advice that I'd give you, is that you need to have the audacity to like put yourself out there, be that one person that raises their hand when other people don't really want to, be that one person who speaks up about something that no one wants to talk about, or that people are kind of shoving off to the side because it's an awkward conversation, but it's one that needs to be had. Again, like just have the audacity when it comes to leadership. A lot of people will, criticize you for it. People are gonna be like, why are you putting yourself through this? Why are you taking all these extracurriculars? Why are you doing so much? Like, you're already like an academic weapon, or whatever it may be, whatever your situation is. Just have the audacity, put aside whatever everyone else thinks, and do what you know is your true passion. Because when you follow those passions, and when you learn that you should be shameless when it comes to leadership, like you get so much more done, and you impact so many more people when you kind of like drown out the haters, and you drown out people criticizing you for just putting yourself out there. And so have the audacity, break those barriers, and even if you kind of feel like you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, that's for the better, and you build character and resilience out of that. So big piece of advice, always remember this tagline: have the audacity.
Definitely. That's what I've realized, over my course of high school. I feel like I relied, like beginning like freshman, sophomore year, I relied way too heavily on my friends to like have that, to pull me through. But I started realizing I gotta start doing stuff on my own. If I want to go anywhere in life, I gotta go do everything on my own. And if you look at if I look at my top 5 extracurriculars now, I'll be honest, all of them, yeah, I'd say maybe except for like 1 or 2, all of them are stuff that I started myself. I ran for FBLA by myself on my own record and got a state position. I started this podcast on my own record, and even have employed, gave some internships part of this podcast to some of my closest and some of my best friends, and then I applied for like big positions. Like I am a CMO, chief marketing officer for a local nonprofit surrounding childhood heart diseases. So everything, like you said, I personally can relate to having that audacity, because if you focus on your friends and you do what they do 24/7, you're not going to get anything done. And this, I've told this to multiple people. Like me and my girlfriend have had this argument before. I'm like, you got to start your own initiatives yourself. Yes,
Yeah.
you can have your friends, but you got to start your own stuff. It's like, no, I want to do it with my friends, and like I need that backbone. But like, coming from what I have, like, yes, I do enjoy doing stuff with my friends, but I'm still me at the end of the day.
For sure.
100%.
Putting yourself out there, and being willing to tap into your creativity, and again, like tapping into the audacity a little bit, and like putting yourself out of your comfort zone, it can get you really far.
Exactly.
Sometimes like when you're at your school, or like in your local community, we mentioned this earlier, like you feel kind of trapped, or as though like you have to follow the same guideline that everyone else is, join the same clubs everyone else is, do the same classes everybody else
Exactly.
is. But at the end of the day, like you need to be your own person, like you said. And when you're your own person, you really tap into like I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, when you tap into like your background, what makes you who you are, that's what's going to get you super far in life. That's also what's going to allow you to impact a lot of people.
Exactly. Well, I 100% agree with everything that you have said throughout this episode. But once again, Alexis, thank you so much for, joining the podcast and spreading your words of wisdom and everything that you've done throughout your high school journey. It personally means a lot to me that you came on here and you took a shot on me and this podcast. We started recently, so we're up and coming, but it truly does personally mean a lot to me that you joined and spread your words of wisdom. So thank you so much.
Of course, I wouldn't be like anywhere where I am today if it wasn't people taking a chance on me. So like I always try to do that as for other people as well.
Definitely. And I truly like I genuinely, like, it really does mean a lot to me. Like this has become something, like I've always been passionate, talking to new people and getting their backgrounds and stuff too. So, this podcast has really helped with that, and especially talking to student leaders. And like you said, if I didn't have the audacity to reach out to everybody, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to all of y'all and learning all these amazing stories and amazing backgrounds and amazing, all of y'all, like, you're committed to Stanford University. That is Ivy level. So it's like
Yeah.
everyone, especially yourself, everyone's crazy stories, crazy backgrounds. So once again, thank you so much.
Of course, yeah. And like again, we literally all of us Coke Scholars in the group chat, like we're all rooting for you to be a Coke Scholar too.
Thank you,
But
thank
like
you,
even like again, even if not, like you have so much potential. Like we see a lot of potential in you. So we're rooting for you
thank you. It
always. And then yeah,
definitely,
continue.
definitely. Oh no, you can continue. It's fine.
Also, for anyone listening to this, like you have so much more potential than you realize. So, again, have that audacity, do things that make you uncomfortable if it's for good, and you'll get far in life,
Definitely.
regardless of your accolades and whatnot.
Definitely, definitely. But once again, thank you so much. And to the viewers at home, thank you so much for watching till the very end. Remember to follow the Voice for You podcast on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. Not Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And
That is on TikTok. I know that.
yes, and stream our content wherever you stream your music or your podcast, such as Apple Music, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Once again, I'm your host, Jesh Vana. Thank you so much, Alexis, for joining the podcast today, and we'll see you all
Of
next
course.
time. Thank you so much.